Welcome to the great city of Montreal, where the streets are full of history, character, and energy. Amidst the wondrous skyline sits Percival Molson Stadium, where tonight the Royale looks to replicate their most memorable moments as another Saturday showcase begins. It's an overcast but very pleasant evening north of the border. We welcome you to our ESPN3 AUDL Saturday Showcase, the Montreal Royale hosting the Ottawa Outlaws, and this is a huge game. Playoff position very much at stake tonight. We look at the Eastern Division standings. The top three make it to the playoffs. The winner of this game will be in first place at the end of the night. Hi again, everybody. Great to have you with us. Evan Lepler, thrilled to be joined by Megan Tormey. The last time these two teams met, Ottawa won by 11, 33-22 here in Montreal. What can the Royale do to try to change things tonight? They're going to change things up defensively to try and slow down the Ottawa offense. And then they're going to work very hard on offense to keep moving the disc. It sounds like Ottawa did a great job of stagnating their offense, and so they're going to work to keep throwing to their cutters to keep forward momentum. Well, this is going to be important. This is the final meeting of the season between these two teams. The first meeting in Ottawa, the Outlaws won it by 1. Last time by 11 here, so Montreal looks to change it up tonight by playing smarter, as you said. In terms of game changers, though, Ottawa's captain, Carl Loiseau, such an important defensive piece. He plays both ways, but defensively he's been their leader from an energy standpoint all season long. Part of the Montreal decision was to try and shut down Derek Alexander as much as possible. So it's going to take Carl Loiseau having a great game to keep Ottawa in the running as much as they were in previous games. He's a fantastic player. He's got a lot of field sense. He can very easily find his way to the end zone, and Derek Alexander is really going to need that from him tonight. You mentioned Alexander. He carved up the Royale, had 11 assists the last time these two teams played. On the other side of the field for Montreal, Yolan Cabot. He's not just become the leader of this Montreal team, he's become one of the best players in the entire league this year. He absolutely has, and watching him, it doesn't take long for you to see why. He's a very fast, wily offensive player. He can quickly and efficiently get to wherever he wants to on the field. Couple that with the fact that he also has a lot of field sense. It's very easy for him to find the spot that his players need to put the disc in for a score. The stats are so impressive, especially because he plays a lot of defense and helps to get the disc back for his team. Huge game tonight, Montreal and Ottawa. We're thrilled to have you with us, and the opening pull is coming up next. This game a battle for third place in the AUDL's Eastern Division, and we are just about ready for the opening pull as the fans come to their feet. Megan, Montreal's played so well here at home. Understandably, they got great support. Their first game this year, they beat Toronto. They're the only team in the East to ever have beaten the Toronto Rush, who are putting a good beat down on the Rochester Dragons as we speak. What's it going to take for Montreal to beat Ottawa here, the only team they have not beaten at Percival Molson Stadium?
Well, I was talking with Coach Michael Lecombe before the game, and it sounds like they have done a lot of introspection to think about what went wrong in the previous 2 games against Ottawa. Most recently, their 11-point loss against Ottawa. And I think that they are going to have to change things up more significantly than they have in the past, which will cause them to go outside of their comfort zone. They're going to have to change up some of the plays they've been able to rely on throughout the season in order to combat Ottawa. The things that they were doing in the past certainly didn't work, so they're going to change up the defense. We're going to see a little bit of zone from the Royale tonight, and offensively, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to push as hard as they can to keep flow going to their cutters. When they just throw it back and forth, it's too easy for Ottawa to get a D, and they will convert.
33-year-old Matt Hogle ready to launch the opening pull for the Outlaws, wearing the road whites. Ottawa, an expansion team this year. It would be pretty special if they could win this game tonight, which would equate to a 3-love season sweep of the Royale. The pull received by Renaud Nemours and Montreal on offense first, and already a layout D from Carl Loiseau. Guy who was on the Toronto Rush last year, traveling from Ottawa to Toronto for every game. And he said that this year he's felt much more like a part of the team because he's hung out with the guys. Last year he was really just a game day player.
So much dedication in Canada for people to travel so long to play with their teams, but Loiseau was so excited to help initiate a franchise in his hometown. Like you said, spending time with the players has helped him feel more connected, and of course he's also proud to be able to bring this kind of action to Ottawa.
Huge layout from Genet, but he could not get the D, and Ottawa punches in the opening score. Robert Schmidt in the end zone, and that's an opening score break for the visitors from Ottawa.
Royale looked pretty confident trying to keep that disc out of the end zone. However, Ottawa displaying some pretty intense concentration and dedication to moving it back and forth as many times as they need to get it into the end zone. And earlier, Evan, you were talking about how important this win would be for Ottawa to go up 3-0 against the Royale. There's so much fun rivalry between these Canadian teams. It's really going to mean a lot for them to walk away saying, we are the better Canadian team when you compare these 2 cities.
Mike Lee picks up the assist, and he hits the 23-year-old Robert Schmidt. Both of these teams have players who have represented Canadian Ultimate. Guys on each team participating in the upcoming U23 championships that'll be held in London in just a couple of weeks. Nick Boucher, one of them. He's on the U23 Open team for Canada. And the 22-year-old with a big left-handed pull. Not much wind down on the field tonight.
It can be a little bit tricky in this stadium, but it's pretty stagnant throughout. I don't think the Royale are going to have the home field advantage understanding the wind the way they normally do when playing in this stadium. It's looking pretty calm, not terribly tricky tonight.
Francois Xavier hot, connecting with Renaud Nemours, and the score is tied 1-1.
That point went off pretty much exactly the way the Royale would have wanted. They did not let Ottawa set up on tight defense. They were able to move it swiftly and quickly to very open cutters downfield.
All of 19 seconds coming off the clock. Kevin Grew got the point started with a deep shot. Grew, another guy who will represent Canada at U23s in a couple weeks. You know, sometimes just one throw can get the defense off kilter, and it looked like Ottawa wasn't even playing defense after the opening throw from Grew.
No, after that throw, they were just playing catch-up all the way to the end zone.
First offensive point for the Outlaws. And we'll get our first look at Derek Alexander, who has the disc in his hands so frequently. His throws are so precise. He's really one of the Canadian icons in the sport. The last time these two teams met, Alexander had 11 assists. He had more than 50 completions in the game. No one else on his team had more than 18. Montreal plans on switching up who guards Alexander, and in the first point is Tiviers, who chases Alexander up line. Slippery throw there from Derek Alexander. His brother Ken has been such an important part of this Outlaws team too. But an Outlaws turnover. What did you see from the downfield defense there that time from Montreal?
Well, at the very beginning of the point, they came out with that 2-3-2 defense that I was talking about at the beginning of the game. Primarily, Tiviers and Bouchot were the main defenders at the beginning of that point. And
hammer to the end zone, and Montreal has the break back. We're on serve 2-1 in the opening quarter as Yolande Cabot broke free the shot from Monfette.
Excuse me, it was Barito and Tiviers who were the main defenders at that point, and it really took Ottawa a long time to adjust to the fact that they came out on zone and then transitioned fairly quickly to a man defense. It looked like their downfield cutters weren't exactly sure where they wanted to go, so the Royale just set up tight on D and forced that turnover.
It was Monfette who hit Guillemette, who dropped the hammer for the score. For Yolande Cabot, that's his 41st goal of the year. He's in the top 10 scorers in the league, and he's played a lot of defensive points for the Royale over the course of the season. Super reliable, super steady, both sides of the disc. We saw Cabot in Dubai this past March with a Canadian team, and even on the sand, he was super fast, quicker than everybody else.
And I think part of that is his field sense as an athlete. He's very efficient. If he knows where he wants to go, he tries to pick the shortest line to make his play. And so despite the different field surface, he was able to continue to play his style of play, which enabled him to get open again and again and again. I can't remember how many times we said his name in the end zone for the score when watching him in Dubai.
Montreal has shifted out of its 2-3-2 zone into man. Andy Ochterlony feeds the backhand up line. Keelan Way goes over the top, contested but caught in the end zone for the Outlaws. Andy Corey with a goal, and we're tied 2-2.
One thing that will be an unknown for the Royale this game is how well Ottawa adjusts. As I mentioned before, I love how thoughtful the Royale are when reanalyzing the games that they have already played, and they notice that Ottawa is a very consistent team in terms of the style of play that they like to demonstrate. And so the Royale knew that they would have to change things up, but they weren't sure whether or not Ottawa would be able to adjust. Right now, they look like they're doing a fairly good job of taking the shots they have available, even if they're a little bit tight, a little bit tricky.
Pretty good throw from Keelan Way. Interesting that time. I thought Ottawa's patience against the 2-3-2 zone was pretty steady. The field being as wide as it is, those zones are tough. Unless you do them a favor and force throws. The resets are there, you're in pretty good shape. This is Gustavo Castaño, who's been banged up by a couple different ailments. Hasn't practiced a whole lot lately, but he's back out there on game day. And underneath, some contact, no whistle. Ottawa's D made by Pete Prue. And a break back, 3-2 Outlaws. Quick turnaround. Again, Lee involved on the restart, and he'd find himself open in the end zone. Blackstock to Lee.
The Outlaws are very good at taking those shots right after the turn. You noticed about 3 to 4 players were behind the disc, but they still took the time to see if anyone was available, try to make that fast break. That's very hard to defend against on a quick turn like that.
Other scores from around the AUDL tonight. The Chicago Wildfire needing to take care of business against Detroit. It looks like The men of Ashbrook are doing just that against the Mechanix. Toronto had a big first quarter lead over Rochester. Probably the biggest game in the AUDL this weekend. Tomorrow, Chicago at Pittsburgh. Although San Francisco has a huge weekend in the Western Division at Vancouver tonight and at Seattle tomorrow. The FlameThrowers, a short-handed squad on the road in the Pacific Northwest. Here's Cabot, shoots it up line, a beautiful on-target put to the end zone, and he hit Genet.
A lot of fast movement, a lot of quick up-the-line cuts and throws from the Royale. You noticed that they always seem to have a very open lane to move through in making that score.
Antoine Genet has had a tremendous statistical season as well. That's his 20th goal to go along with 42 assists, not to mention 20 Ds for number 17 in blue. A lot of these players on both teams have been playing together for a long time on their local club teams. Mephisto in Montreal and Ottawa, Phoenix. The pro game has forced a variety of different adjustments. Guys like Cabot and Genet have excelled in each. That was the score that tied it 3-3. And a deep shot. Two blue jerseys in the area. And it will sail out of bounds. Jeremy Hill, who is Ottawa's primary deep target, had no chance. That's the kind of throw that Montreal's hoping to force against this zone, right?
Absolutely. That's always the kind of throw you're hoping for against a zone. Something that airs it out enough for one or two of your players to hop in on and take away. And that, of course, is a costly error from the Royale, who really need to conserve the disc anytime they're lucky enough to get a D.
Just like that, the Outlaws convert. David Jansen picks up the assist. The veteran Andy Ochterlony on the receiving end for Ottawa.
Ochterlony, one of the older players on Ottawa, but of course that doesn't mean anything with some of these Canadian players who seem to age with a little more grace than the rest of us. He has quite a lot of experience to boast about. He's played for Team Canada a number of years, played for some very competitive Canadian teams, obviously showing off his veteran prowess tonight.
And the age on this score, David Jansen, 41, Ochterlony, 37. If my math is right, that's 88 years combining on that Outlaws conversion.
You know, a player I really respect in Chicago, Richard Berger, who's played for a number of years, says, you know, when you're young, you don't always know where to cut, but you can always get there in time. As you age a little bit, you start to get better field sense, and you know where to go, but you just barely get there in time. Then you get even older, you know exactly where you need to be, but you no longer have the prowess to get there. Not always the case in some of these Canadian players.
And knowledge and speed are converses on the chart. Genet looking for St. Jean Timmins, and he makes the one-handed grab, and he's in the end zone too.
Wow, what a play. He managed to reach over his defender in the opposite direction he was moving to make that save for his team.
Genet didn't make it easy for him, but he gave him a chance to be in the top 10. And this grab just might get there, and he was undercut by the Outlaw defender at the end of the play. Right near that white chalk, which signals the out of bounds on that far side of the field.
I believe that was Schmidt on defense. Certainly disappointed when you don't come up with that, but you also have to be pretty pleased that a play like that occurred.
Jean St. John Timmins, a very steady scorer, consistent guy for the Royale. 30 years old, did not play college ultimate, but has been in the club scene in the area for a while. His second year with the Royale. That was his 17th goal. There's a good shot of Derek Alexander. Was a teenager playing with some of the World Championship teams from the Canadian West Coast in Vancouver. And you can see the defense here. They're really guarding areas, doing a nice job of confounding Ottawa's game plan, just slowing down, because last time these two teams met, Ottawa broke them down. Contact in 10 yards will be taken here for the Outlaws.
Something very important for the Outlaws if they hope to take this game is maintaining that patience that you talked about earlier, how they exhibited the patience to make the shots that they needed to get the disc to the end zone when what they're used to is being taken away.
Oh, that was a gorgeous throw, but it was out of bounds. My mistake. Octorloni could not keep the feet in bounds. Kevin Guillemette nearby defending. Across the midway point of this first quarter. Olivier St. Denis picking up the disc, gets it to Cabot. Stall count rising in his own end zone, and he discovers Tavierge. Over to Barreto. And a big shot. St. Denis wants Cabot, and Yolande Cabot went up a little too early. The pressure from Jeremy Hill forced the early jump.
Very surprising misread from a player like Cabot.
You got to give credit to Jeremy Hill, the defender.
Absolutely. His defense forced Cabot to go up early, thus resulting in that turnover.
Alexander scoobers across the field for Jansen, who takes a tumble, and Cabot will pick up the contact penalty, 10 yards for Jansen. Inside out flick. And what a beauty it was. That's in the end zone. Keelan Way has his 18th goal of the year. He read it well and milked it well, but that throw was a beauty for Ottawa.
Absolutely. I was going to say the exact same thing. Way did a fantastic job of making sure he made that catch in the end zone. But without the beauty of that put and the angle it flew, he wouldn't have had that opportunity.
There's the initial play that led to the turnover. And it's Jeremy Hill. Fairly unorthodox way to break that mark. Think about perhaps the outside and backhand stepping out. Might have been a little more high percentage, but it worked, so who am I to critique?
You know, when you're 19 years old, I think sometimes you don't plan to go with the boring, with the blasé. You might as well make a show of it.
Well, Hill is just 19, and he hit Keelan Way, who's 28. Younger connection there than the Jansen to Octorloni before. Similarly successful, though, and now Montreal takes a shot. This is a 1-on-2 circumstance. And Montreal almost made a great play in the end zone, but it was smacked to the ground. Blackstock was there to make sure that Hout did not come up with an outrageously ridiculous catch. No zone defense here. This is a basic 3-4 horizontal stack, and Blackstock airs it out. He has sent Robert Schmidt using the entire width of the field, shy of the pylon. And Schmidt will get to center the disc. Ottawa looking for its first two-score lead of the opening quarter. Beautiful put there from Blackstock. And in the end zone, it's Lasso.
It looks like Nemours got a little tripped up trying to guard Loiseau. Just made a bit of a button hook cut. Got that right in the middle of front of the end zone. Could not have been an easier score for Ottawa.
The near catch from Hout. He got his hand on it first, a good read.
And then a nearly second effort grab.
I don't like Nemours' chances of staying with Loiseau in that isolation play in the end zone.
No, when you're guarding someone like Loiseau, who at the front of the end zone, at the front of the stack in the end zone, obviously the person who's going to be cutting for the disc, there has to be good communication between the person guarding the thrower and the person guarding Loiseau so that you can work together to cut off the throw and the opportunity.
Under 4 minutes here in the first quarter. Jean-Lévis Champagne with his first touch. One of 7 owners of this Royale team, but Jean-Lévis is the only full-time employee of the Royale. He has made this team his life, although it's not a change for Ultimate to be his life. They're looking for Grew. Kevin Grew cannot make the grab in the end zone.
A little bit of a lofty put, couple that with 2 players at his back. No surprise that particular throw was a turnover.
Nick Boucher was the closest defender. Slicing through the defense. Corey connecting with Boucher. Grew on the mark. A low shot that hovers perfectly. Blackstock into the end zone, finds Prue.
Seamless and effortless offense from Ottawa. You know, we were lucky enough to watch them play against the Toronto Rush at week 4. And you definitely saw what they were trying to do. They were a little rough around the edges, but ultimately they looked like they were starting to work well together that early in the season. I really think they've started to smooth out some of the issues they had early on, which are very obviously due to lack of practice, lack of chemistry. Things are working so well for Ottawa this game.
That's 3 straight scores for the Outlaws. Back-to-back breaks, part of that run. And just what you're talking about, earlier in the year, they were a team that hadn't played together in this style of Ultimate for a long time, and the inconsistency showed. Week 1, a loss. Week 2, a win. They alternated loss-win the first 8 weeks of the season, but their last 3 games have all been victories. The Outlaws looking for a 4th straight win tonight. You know, Carl Loiseau basically put it to me like this before the game. He said, if we lose, we don't have any chance of making the playoffs. If we win, we can make the playoffs if we can beat Toronto and DC. They played Toronto in their last 2 games of the season. It's likely to have to win at least one of those. But for the Rush, those games might not be that important. They might already have the #1 spot locked up. Speaking of using the width of the field, from sideline to sideline, the Royale get the crowd on its feet. And it's Nemours in the end zone for the score. That breaks the 3-0 run.
There are a number of things that I think Ottawa has going for them tonight. First, as you mentioned, how important this game is in order for them to continue their season. I also think that the fact they beat Montreal the previous 2 times, and most recently at Montreal by 11 points, you know, I've been in situations where we've beaten other teams and you walk on the team with a confidence that just cannot be faked. And it really feels like that is being exhibited tonight. I'm impressed with how the Royale have made the adjustments that they talked about and how they are executing them, but I still think that Ottawa is playing with that level of confidence that you get when you really truly believe you are the better team on the field.
That's a great point. You take the field with confidence. It's a brand new dynamic, especially when you know that you've done it before. You know, Jean-Lévis Champagne, after the momentous win over the Toronto Rush here back in late April, told me that it's all about confidence for his team. You need to take the field expecting to win. This past week I asked him, do you still have that confidence knowing that they've beaten you? And he said this week, it's not about confidence. It's about pride. He said that they would be ready. 2.5 to go in the quarter. That gets us started. Ochterlony with a big swing. And here's a deep shot. David Jansen, the outlaw in the area, and it's knocked away by a pair of Royale defenders. St. Denis and Guillemette in the vicinity for the Royale.
The Royale have been doing an excellent job protecting the end zone territory whenever possible tonight. It's not the first time we've seen a couple of Royale players in the area to try and get the D.
Monfette, good job attacking that swing in his own end zone. Back to St. Denis. Up the line for Barreto. Now Cabot. And Ottawa's going to take possession. A travel was called on Montreal. Not sure if it was called on Cabot or perhaps St. Denis, who had it before him.
Either way, this is dangerous territory for the Royale to have Ottawa. They have done a great job of converting these turns time and time again.
Oh, and it's Octorloni who goes up over Genet. Octorloni's got the size and the guile, and he gets the job done to make it 8-5.
Genet did all he could to try and close that gap. We saw him speeding in. He was there, but just not in the right position to take that disc away from Octorloni.
Andy Octorloni moved to Ottawa from Toronto about 5 years ago. And he's been a huge addition to the Ottawa scene. Sizing that one up with size and years of experience. His business card has to be one fantastic piece of paper because they need to print pretty small. Here's his title. He's the legal counsel for the Department of Justice in the Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development Legal Services Unit. I mean, it costs a lot of money to print that thing.
Maybe his is a little bit larger than normal. Oversized business card.
Very interesting career in the capital of Canada. St. John Timmins connects with Grew, and he'll shoot one deep in the end zone. Jean-Philippe Riopel for the score.
A pretty putt from Grew to get that disc close to him in the end zone. Riopel in the perfect position, running at the perfect speed to make that grab.
Second time in this game, Megan, that Montreal's offense has scored in less than 20 seconds. It was that first under from St. John Timmins to Grew that kind of opened everything up. Just a few throws down the field.
You know, that's got to do a lot to bolster their confidence. Whenever you start to see the other team taking it away, when you get a couple of quick back-to-back scores like that, it helps remind you that you do have what it takes to stay in the running. However, it hasn't seemed to do much to diminish the confidence of the Outlaws. We'll see if they can keep that intense pressure, especially here with that 2-3-2, trying to slow down the Outlaws and give themselves an opportunity to make a turn.
Derek Alexander hit his brother Ken, who throws it back. Good downfield defense here from Montreal. The Outlaws being patient. 45 seconds to go in the opening quarter. Outlaws broke in the opening point of the game, so Ottawa will receive the disc to start the second quarter. So they very realistically could stretch it from 8-6 to 10-6 if they manage time and execute. But they haven't advanced anything in the last 45 seconds.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of side-to-side momentum, absolutely no yardage gained. You can see each player with the disc looks like he wants to let it go long, but is trying to be patient and make the smart shot.
Oh, this is Hill. He's got very little time. He throws one up. Octorloni's been great in these situations all year. This one floats over his head and incomplete. And that is how the opening 12 minutes concludes here in Montreal. That's a big-time defensive play from the Royale. Octorloni had position, but the disc went over his head.
And Derek Alexander very nearly made the saving catch.
And it might have been Tivierge who got a piece of this. So Montreal didn't play a ton of defense in the opening quarter, but they got the stop in the final seconds to hold the deficit to 2. 1 down, 3 to go. 8-6. Ottawa leads here on ESPN3.
Great stuff about
The Scion FRS. Scion, what
that's
moves
exactly
you?
what I'm talking about. That's awesome.
Good.
Montreal Royale fans energized, undeterred by the 2-score deficit at the end of one. Show you some of the action from the first quarter in case you joined us late. The opening point of the game basically began with a D. Ottawa on the second or third throw got this tremendous layout D, and Carl Loiseau really set the tone.
But the Royale remained undeterred. Even though they had a few missed opportunities, they still worked hard to keep the score very, very tight. We watched them trade points back and forth, but a lot of big plays from both teams.
Earlier this year, Ottawa, as you said, their end zone offense was unrefined. Now they're doing a much better job in the red zone of punching it in.
And they're doing a great job of taking their turns and converting them into scores within 5 passes, which is very hard to defend against.
It was sunny and gorgeous all day today. Now overcast, but still delightful. They're expecting some rain here in the province tomorrow. Really a very pleasant day, though. For the first time, I was able to hike up to Mount Royal, not far from Percival Molson Stadium. Got a great view of the city.
How long did it take you to walk up?
Not too long, pretty easy, manageable hike. There were lots of people at the top. There was ice cream being sold. Really a delightful day.
You had me at ice cream. Now I know what I'm doing tomorrow.
Even if it's raining? Ice cream will get Megan.
Rain or shine.
Blizzard,
Rain or shine.
hurricane, doesn't matter. Here's a deep shot. Leon Forano makes a great catch, and he was in the end zone for the score.
Towing the line, but the referees say he was in, much to the chagrin of the Montreal crowd.
Leon Forano from Gatineau, just outside of Ottawa. 27 years old. Early in the season, he was a super reliable deep cutter. And this is a picturesque throw that just came back in time. And the referee just announced a force-out foul, arguing that he would have come down in bounds if not for the contact from Sean St. John Timmins. Hard to tell from that angle, but I still think he might have gotten that first foot in bounds, although the fans that were booing down there had a much better view than we do in our vantage point up here.
Absolutely. This press box is pretty high up.
At every game here at Percival Molson Stadium, they have kids clinics. Every kid who comes to a Royale game gets a junior disc, a 145-gram disc, to begin their ultimate career.
You know, I was in San Francisco last weekend visiting family, and I took them to the FlameThrowers Cascade game. I was hoping that perhaps there was a clinic for my little cousins who are 9, 6, and 4. However, there was a bounce house, which they seemed perfectly pleased with.
I was thrilled by the bounce house, too.
Yeah, I noticed you were hogging it a bit, Evan.
The reset to Gustavo Castaño. Now Castaño breaks up line. Christian Matthews swings the disc. St. John Timmins. And this disc is going to keep floating, and what a catch! Not the intended target, but who cares? Francois Xavier Hot saves the day for Montreal.
With an incredibly hot layout to save that point.
over a few blue jerseys. Rio Pell couldn't get there, but a tremendous play. Great awareness by Hutt.
Rio Pell going up just a little bit early because of Blackstock's defense. Certainly disappointing when he realized that it was way too high for him to be jumping at that point. But Hutt recognizing his opportunity. What a fantastic save.
And an important one with 11:05 to go here in the second quarter. Trying to keep this within a manageable deficit.
Looks like Hutt probably got some turf burn from that layout, but certainly a small price to pay.
Hurts a little bit less since he made the catch.
Right. It's true.
Seems like Alexander can just break the mark. No matter who's guarding him, no matter where the disc is on the field.
Yeah, I've heard a number of players call him unstoppable, and it's really not surprising to see why that descriptor comes up again and again. He's just able to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants with the disc.
Here's his brother Ken. And a pick call downfield, so Ottawa will retreat 10 yards. In your career, you've played a lot of downfield defense on cutters. When the other team has a handler that you know can break the mark whenever they want, how do you play different defensively down on the downfield?
Well, you certainly have to prioritize where you would want the disc to be received. And you know you don't want it received on the break side. So I typically play just a little bit tighter so that if the disc does go off to the break side, I'm able to then adjust my mark and stop that break side bleeding that often occurs with a break throw.
That hammer from Derek Alexander to his brother was another gem. They had 5 of those over-the-top hammer connections from Alexander to Alexander the last time these two teams met. Carlo Asso, the captain, said, I wasn't aware of that game plan, but the Alexanders drove to the game together and figured it out. And, Derek said, he didn't want to be arrogant, but he said the last time these two teams met, he was in a zone unlike he hadn't been in before, and you might be rediscovering it with a throw like this.
That was fantastic. Interestingly, Ken, his brother, who received that hammer put, he's a carpenter. He said normally he just relies on his very physical job to keep himself in shape, but since joining the Ottawa Outlaws, he's been keeping up with the demands of their training regime. You have to think, what was he like when he wasn't training? Because he's certainly a force to be reckoned with now.
Yeah, welcome to Pro Ultimate. Billy and Derek Alexander played first before Ken. And timeout called after the D. Matt Goodkey comes up with the interception. And it's likely the Outlaws offense will come on the field. 9:51 to go second quarter. The Outlaws seeking a season sweep of the Royale. They won the first 2 meetings, including one here in McGill. 10-7, the Outlaws lead. Timeout on the field.
The Scion FRS. Scion, what moves you?
Well, that gentleman who wears beau travail on the back of his shirt is perhaps the most energetic, charismatic, humorous on-field host in the entire American Ultimate Disc League. Beau travail very well could be his name, but beau travail means good job, good work in French.
I didn't know your French was so good, Evan.
It's terrible. I asked. I do remember from our trip last year. Remember how to say layout in French?
No, I don't.
See if we have any more good plongeons.
That's right.
The rest of the game. Derek Alexander, who had the assist on the hammer to his brother last point, has the disc on the restart. And he scoobers all the way back to Jansen. Uncovered, who connects with Loiseau. Decent red zone defense here from the Royale. Jansen back to Loiseau. Matt Hogel. Ottawa going backwards here. But now the Wizard has the disc. Alexander shoots one to the end zone. Over one defender. Right on target.
How amazing was that put? He was able to put it over Maxime Guy in order to get to Way. Really, that was absolutely not by accident. Alexander knew the only way that he was going to be able to get it to Way was to put it high enough so that no Royale defender could get to it. And he certainly did, just outside the outstretched reach of Guy.
Some sort of voodoo float on that throw. Keelan Way comes up with his second goal. Derek Alexander with his second straight assist, and now for the first time today, it's a 4-score lead for the visitors from Ottawa.
That's going to be tough for the Royale to adjust against, because you watched that point and defensively they were doing everything right. In fact, it looked like they were reading the minds of the Outlaw players, taking away every single lane that they were thinking about throwing to. Really, they had to put some voodoo on the disc to make that score. And what can you do against that?
It does feel like Ottawa has weathered the initial defensive adjustments that the Royale implemented. And now it's just up to Montreal to, first things first, take care of business on your offensive point, which has been far from automatic. Antoine Lepagnon dumps it back to Castagno. Nemours is on the second effort, and contact is the call. 10-yard violation. Across midfield progresses the 37-year-old Renaud Nemours. To Grue. Hammer. Lepagnon makes the skying catch.
Grue has had some very flashy puts today, and that certainly was the best we have seen from him.
Lepagnon made one of the most memorable catches of the season for Montreal. I believe it was an end of second quarter buzzer beater against the Toronto Rush in their home opener. Really transformed the momentum of the game as the team went into the locker room. And there, Grue not hesitating at all. The catch made with Nick Boucher in the area defensively.
It was interesting at watching Lepagnon as he set up that cut. The moment the disc entered Grue's hand, he made the cut for the break side as though he was sure that Grue not only had but was willing to put that throw.
Montreal head coach Mikel Lacombe does not do a lot with the offense. It is Caroline Cadotte who primarily lectures on offensive strategy. Lacombe handles the defensive line, so any adjustments we see in this side of the disc largely planned by the head coach. Ochterlony marked by the much shorter St. Denis, and a stall is called. Ochterlony held onto the disc for just a split second too long, and a turnover. Believe a receiver travel is called, saying that the disc was not initiated into play at the right spot. Throwers travel is a turnover. Receivers travel is not. Montreal sustains possession. Until now, an uncharacteristic drop there from Tivierge. Here's Ochterlony to the end zone.
A plongeon for the score.
Montreal had the disc with a chance to get back within two. Ottawa retakes possession and strikes quickly.
A well-executed layout, too. You noticed how quickly he got low, so that he was close enough to the ground to just push off of his toes, out, reach his hands, and pull in that disc.
He's played in 3 different World Games for Team Canada. Octorloni started playing Ultimate in 1996 at McMaster University. In his 20th year of Ultimate. Offense progressing down the field. Tivierge hits Nemours. Nemours had Grood, chose not to hit him, and then struggled to find St. John Timmins, who throws the crossfield shot. Grew will run this down. Yolan Cabot, his first touch in a while. Back to Grew. And contact. Kinley G is the defender that's chasing Yolan Cabot around the field. And here's the Montreal score. Kevin Grew connecting with Max Guy. So what do we see from that point in terms of the Royals' offensive flow that we haven't seen on some of the others where they've made mistakes and given it away?
Well, I was really impressed with the speed at which the players were cutting. Grew was working incredibly hard to make sure he was getting open. So oftentimes it takes that kind of intensity to just continue to churn, even if you're not getting great cuts from downfield or even if you're not getting really long puts. As long as you're cutting hard, opening up opportunities both wide and deep, it makes it so much harder for the defense to settle in and stop opportunities downfield.
Great to have you with us for another AUDL Saturday Showcase. The Ottawa Outlaws and the Montreal Royale here from Percival Molson Stadium on the campus of McGill University on the outskirts of downtown Montreal, not far from the shores of the St. Lawrence River. Derek Alexander, crossfield, outside and backhand for Jeremy Hill, who stumbles and hits Octorloni in the end zone anyway.
You know, we've seen some really tight defensive pressure from the Royale, and we've seen the Outlaws battle that and take as many shots necessary until they open something up. But then we've also seen so many plays like this from the Outlaws where within 3 scores, 3 throws, they're able to get it into the end zone. It really helps maintain your intensity, your momentum as a team when you're able to sometimes score with ease. They really didn't have to labor very hard for that point. So you go on, you work hard, you get off quickly, you're feeling pretty good on the sidelines.
Yeah, they look like they're feeling pretty good. For good reason. About 13 seconds off the clock on that last possession, which took 2 throws. Alexander to Hill to Octorloni. These professional games, offenses that convert so quickly and effortlessly like that can really put pressure on the other team. Pressure that Montreal perhaps feels here. Castagno gains a good deal of yardage. Rio Pell looking for Cabot. Yolan Cabot to the summit in the end zone for the score.
What a beautiful read, perhaps learning from his mistakes earlier today where he jumped just a moment too soon. He could not have timed that more perfectly. Just when the disc came within his reach, he leapt up and pulled it in with 2 Ottawa defenders at his back. The first to go up and go up huge. Yolan Cabot pulling that disc in for the score.
He's not a giant, and he's probably not most well known for his high-flying skies. More of a speedster. A quick cutter, but a tremendous illustration of great timing right there. Doesn't it feel like every score is really important right now for the Royale, just to try to keep this close?
Absolutely. And you pointed out earlier how they are able to score with ease at times, but they really can't rely on that speed. We have seen them labor so much offensively that they really have to wait until Ottawa's on their heels to make quick passes into the end zone. So they certainly have to savor absolutely every offensive opportunity they have.
Montreal got lucky that the Outlaws were not looking downfield. There was a defensive miscommunication and someone was streaking open deep. They continue to work the disc well on the unders. Alexander, the pivot man, hits Keelan Way. And this shot will angle to the ground too quickly.
Yeah, Keelan put just a little too much outside in on that disc. It was really going at more of a blade angle. It didn't have enough loft to stay up in time for him to get to the disc.
Guillemette throws it up line. It's intercepted. And Montreal wants a penalty. And the foul will be awarded to Charles Barreteau. Wonder if Montreal would consider a timeout here to get the O-line on the field. Such an important red zone opportunity to try to get it back within 2. Saint-Denis. For a while there, the mark was a ways away from the disc, giving him time to throw, and it's dropped in the end zone. But contact was called, interference from behind. They say Jeremy Hill hit Parenteau. And Parenteau gets shaken up, which might give us a chance to take a look at the replay and see if this call was just. Well, he took his hat off. The hat is part of the body. Parenteau looks like he's had better days.
Absolutely having trouble getting off the field.
Yolan Cabot into the game, and he will pick up the disc. Montreal's only lead of the game was at 2-1. And Cabot hits Grew in the end zone. So from down 4, the Royale scored 2 in a row and sliced the deficit in half.
It was a tight but easy toss from Yolan Cabot to Grew, who just basically ran parallel with the front of the end zone in order to grab that disc. There really wasn't much of an opportunity for the Outlaws to contest the throw at all.
Montreal enters this game 8-4 overall. Currently ahead of Ottawa in the standings. The Outlaws 6-4 with 3 games remaining after this. Montreal only has a matchup with the DC Breeze on July 5th, Sunday here at Percival Molson Stadium, left on the regular season schedule. So the Royale will be done on the 5th. The Outlaws will have 2 more games left with Toronto, the 18th and the 19th, that could determine whether the Royale make the playoffs or not. Although a win for Montreal tonight could pretty much lock it up. Carl Loiseau elevates and soars into the end zone for the score. He's got an effortlessness about him, the way he sort of gracefully maneuvers around the field.
Yeah, he really is a very smart player, and it demonstrates every time he cuts deep for the end zone. He times his cut well. He starts from a good position on the field. Every thrower has to be super pleased to throw to Loasso. He makes it so easy for them by setting things up as well as he does.
Pretty good power position from the receiver, Colin Green, as well. Midwest action, the wind chill of Minnesota leading the Cincinnati Revolution early in that one. Very interesting developments across the Midwest. Of course, Madison sits in first. Pittsburgh a sturdy second. That battle for third, very much like the East, still up in the air in the Midwest. It's Indy and Chicago who are in the 3-4 positions currently. Both still confident they can make it to the playoffs. Big game for the Wildfire tomorrow in the Steel City. Sean St. John Timmons. You can tell he wanted the hook, and the backhand with a little air bounce to it. Here's a deep shot. Francois Xavier Hutt in the end zone again.
You know, there's so many players on the Royale who I remember watching last season, but it's been so fun to watch the Royale improve both as a team as well as on the individual level as well. Hutt was a mainstay for the Royale last year, really has elevated his level of play. So much more exciting this year to watch.
It was a pretty smooth throw, plenty of space for Hutt to go up and make the grab. There's Mikel Lacombe in the Montreal Royale collared shirt. The sideline leader, thoughtful young coach for the Royale. That was basically a no-look cross-field scuba from Derek Alexander, and he threw it like it was no big deal. Slicing through the defense. And that one tipped away. Alexander could not reach in and snag it. A chance for the Royale to sneak back within one. Cabot up line. He got the foot in. We've got a one-score game.
You know, the Outlaws did a great job of adjusting defensively that point. Barito was open at the front of the end zone for 3 different passes, but just was not able to receive the disc from one of his players. But then it's thrown back to Yolan Cabot, who had to make a fast strike cut up the line to score that point for the Royale.
There is the D. Let's talk about this cut that Cabot made to score. On the one hand, he knew that his mark was going for the hand block, and thus he had a beat up line. Not a lot of space to work with there, though. You really need a very tight, crisp throw.
Absolutely. Barito recognized that he was not going to get the disc at the front of the end zone, so he pulled back, giving Cabot just the opportunity he needed to get rid of the disc. And then Hogel had raised his hand to try and block the throw. That was just enough time for Cabot to get some separation and get to the front of the end zone.
So after it's been Ottawa in control for so much of the half, the Royale have a chance to tie. Cabot hits St. Denis in the end zone. 14-all.
St. Denis obviously ecstatic about scoring that goal and scoring it as quickly as he did. And of course the crowd responding, reacting. This is just the kind of energy that the Royale needed, both from within their team and from the crowd, to get them going.
The Outlaws have taken a timeout. The sky at one end from Francois Xavier Hutt. Cabot sneaking up line at the other. And then Cabot hitting St. Denis 3 goals in the span of 54 seconds. That's how quickly runs can become momentum-changing factors in a professional ultimate game.
Absolutely, but now the challenge for the Royale is to maintain this kind of intensity, both defensively and offensively. We've seen them move quickly, we've seen them struggle. They're really not able to rely on that quick movement whenever they want to, so now they have to hold the pressure in order to actually take the advantage in this game.
Certainly a confident-looking stride onto the field from St. Denis. Only 20 years old, he currently attends Sherbrooke University, has aspirations of becoming a firefighter. St. Denis will pull. As we zoom out to this spectacular scene, it always is quite the spectacle here at Percival Molson Stadium. This venue was built back in the 1910s. Percival Molson, a great student athlete at McGill, passed away in World War I, fighting in France. Left money in his will for the stadium to be built. Named after him shortly thereafter, and it has been expanded. A lot of great moments in sports. The Olympics were held here. Grey Cups in the CFL have been held here. The Chicago Bears once had an exhibition game here against the Montreal Alouettes. They played the first half with Canadian football rules, the second half with American football rules. Last night on TV was watching a little bit of the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Calgary Stampeders in their season opener. Megan was glued to her television as well. 2 minutes to go here in the first half. By the time the third quarter starts, we'll be playing completely under the lights. And how about that throw from Derek Alexander? He's like a character in the Matrix, just navigating around his mark. The layout backwards release. Megan is shaking her head here in the booth. You cannot comprehend that, can you?
I can't. To be able to put that throw exactly where you want, where you don't even have your center of gravity maintained, I can't do anything nearly that graceful while falling backwards.
Look at that. To David Jansen in the end zone. That's the type of throw that you see sometimes on sand, just because it's kind of fun to sort of lay out into the sand as you're releasing the disc.
Yeah.
On grass, that is a really thoughtful throw. And watching Derek Alexander more and more, yes, he has the throws, the mechanics behind them, but his vision and field sense is something else, isn't it?
Absolutely, and we have seen time and time again how much it means for the Ottawa offense to have him on their squad. He really helps dictate how things go, and he helps bring out the best in all of the other players.
Kevin Grew, too far. Looking for Hott. That possession had been almost too easy for the Royale until that last put.
That is a very hard throw to make, and it's not always easy to see how difficult it is when you're just spectating, but throwing to a person who's running away into the end zone when there's really not a lot of separation, it's very easy to put the disc just a little too far.
Looking for the quick trigger huck. Andy Corey put too much on the deep shot intended for Goodkey. So Grew is running the length of the field to pick this disc up. Montreal will take its final timeout of the half. 53 seconds on the clock. We've got a one-score game here in Quebec. Final minute of the first half when we come back.
Style with engagement. Style with confidence. Style with consciousness. Style with vibrance. A wave of social change being born. Waveborne, style with impact.
Before the game, they had a bunch of cars driving onto the track. Every member of the Royale was in one of those cars and introduced as they popped out in their beautiful blue jerseys. Final minute of the half, Grew swings it out and takes a deep shot. And that disc is almost caught, but it falls incomplete. Ten seconds for the Outlaws, and they turn it over. And Montreal does have one timeout left. And the clock will be reset to 7 seconds. So the Outlaws up by 1. 7 seconds will be on the clock. And the Royale will be looking for the tie in the waning moments of this half. Well, whoever created the AUDL schedule deserves a bonus, because between the last couple of weeks, seeing San Jose and Seattle in a first place slugfest last Saturday night in Northern California, the Spiders dropped 35 goals to clinch first place in the league's toughest division out west. This week we got a battle for third place. One team's going to make the playoffs. One team likely will be on the outskirts. And then next week, Saturday night, on Independence Day, July 4th, we'll be in Atlanta for a crucial Southern Division clash. The Jacksonville Cannons, nobody's been hotter in the league. Winners of 7 of their last 8 against the Atlanta Hustle, who have occupied first place for a good chunk of the season. One of those teams likely won't make the playoffs, and next week's game will probably decide it. 7 seconds in the stadium clock. Cabot initiates the restart, and there was contact on the mark. The disc was caught by Lepagnon, but the foul was called, which is going to give Cabot 10 yards, and they should reset the clock to 7 seconds. They do. And Cabot throws it away immediately. Intercepted, and the Outlaws have one chance, and the disc sails incomplete. And here's a full field huck the other way. It's not going to reach the end zone. I don't think they got it off anyway, although he tipped it into the end zone, and the referee says it's no good. I do believe the throw was released from the end zone after the buzzer. But that is legal, and nearly a spectacular finish to the half, as Janae couldn't get the throw off before the buzzer. But you are allowed to mack it forward, and that would have been perhaps the craziest buzzer beater of the season. Holy cow. Score at the half, Ottawa 15, Montreal 14. At one point, the Outlaws led by as many as 4. Back when the score was 11-7 and then 13-9. Give the Royale credit. Montreal closes the half on a 5-2 run to get back within 1. Actually tied it up, but Derek Alexander with another assist in the final 2 minutes of the half to give Ottawa the lead. He hit David Jansen in the end zone for the score that made it 15-14. Great half for Alexander, who's had a remarkable career, and he's about to add some credential to his status. He's about to talk to Megan Torming.
Thanks, Evan. Derek, you had a lead over the Royale, and they were able to close the gap in less than a minute, and then you guys called a timeout. What did you talk about?
I think the main thing we talked about in that huddle was just keeping our composure, knowing that the pressure that Montreal was applying to us wasn't really the reason for the turnovers. It was more just our mental mistakes and us letting up a bit, feeling a little bit too comfortable early in the game.
And how are you able to adjust against some new defense you haven't seen from the Royale yet, their 2-3-2 zone?
Yeah, I don't think we've made the necessary adjustments that we should. Hopefully we're going to make those going into the second half. We tried to spread the field out a bit, but I think we spread it out a little bit too much and essentially taking a few of our cutters out of the play and let them to play, pretty easy defense. So we haven't been very smart about it, but we're going to make those adjustments coming out.
Okay, how are you feeling going into the second half?
Confident. Very confident, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Good luck, and we'll see what you guys do in the second half. Back to you, Evan.
Megan, Derek, thank you. That's a guy who has long had a lot of confidence since he was a teenager on the world stage. Halftime here from Percival Molson Stadium. 1-goal game. The Outlaws lead by 1. Top 10 and Week 11 recaps on our halftime show coming up as our AUDL coverage on ESPN3 and TSN Go continues. A hectic and high-scoring Week 11 out west. On Saturday night in San Jose, the Spiders' offense lit up Seattle for 35 scores. San Jose making plenty of easy plays and a fair share of spectacular ones, too. 7 goals apiece for Bo Kittredge and Sean Hamm as the Spiders avenged their previous loss to the Cascades, winning this one 35-28. Also on Saturday, San Diego hosting Vancouver. The Growlers enjoyed their best offensive performance of the season. Jimmy Mickle led the way with 7 assists, and Casey Wu caught the disc in the end zone 10 different times, helping the Growlers surpass the Riptide 32-28. On Sunday, the Riptide looking to avoid a winless road trip as they took on Los Angeles. But the Aviators were determined at home, snapping their 3-game losing skid by scoring a season-best 27 goals. LA victorious over Vancouver 27-20. And in perhaps the most exciting finish across the league in Week 11, the Seattle Cascades completed a miraculous comeback as Zane Rankin and Sam Layman each made outrageous grabs to tie the game with less than 2 seconds to go in regulation. But in overtime, the San Francisco FlameThrowers played flawlessly, shutting out Seattle 4-0 in the extra session to prevail 25-21. That win moved the FlameThrowers into a tie for second with Seattle. San Diego still very much in the playoff mix too. Meanwhile, at the top of the pack, the San Jose Spiders have clinched the regular season title out west. Week 11 kicked off on Friday night with a mega Midwest matchup. Madison and Chicago went back and forth throughout 4 intense quarters. Tied at 22 late, Radicals cutter Pat Schreiwise with a sensational layout score, giving Madison the lead for the final time. The Radicals register a huge win in Chicago, 23-22. One day later, a rematch in Wisconsin, and the Radicals came out focused and fired up. Madison led 7-3 in the opening quarter and rolled to a 24-16 victory to complete the weekend sweep over the Wildfire. Also on Saturday, Pittsburgh taking on Cincinnati, and the Thunderbirds led again by Pat Earls, who recorded 8 assists. David Batt scored 6 goals for the Birds as they beat the Revolution 25-19. Madison clinched a playoff berth with a strong weekend, while Chicago now looking up at Indy for the final playoff spot in the Midwest. The Wildfire with a huge test as they travel to Pittsburgh on Sunday. Some sensational action down south with Jacksonville and Atlanta waging a Week 11 war in northern Florida. The Cannons relied on their leaders. Cole Sullivan dished 9 goals, while Misha Freystarter scored 7 times. Atlanta made a late run, but the hustle ultimately fell short as Jacksonville earned a huge win to further shake things up in the south. The final 29-27. Meanwhile, a Carolina clash featuring Raleigh and Charlotte also remained close throughout. But Flyers cutter Justin Allen scored 6 goals to lead Raleigh's balanced attack. The Flyers find a way to get the win, 24-21. 3 teams battling for the 2 playoff spots in the South. Only remaining meeting between the top 3 takes place on July 4th when Jacksonville visits Atlanta on ESPN3. The Toronto Rush have long been considered the top team in the East, and after this past weekend, there's no reason to think that should change. The Rush never trailed in their home victory over the Royale, Toronto's 6th consecutive win. The final, Toronto 24, Montreal 18. Also on Saturday, the New York Empire beginning a weekend duel against DC. The Empire led 8-7 in the third quarter when Mother Nature intervened, forcing the early and abrupt conclusion. Tough break for the Breeze as the Empire get the credit for the 8-7 win on the road. One day later, a rematch in Brooklyn with the Empire using stingy defense to make up for their sloppy offense. New York turned it over a ton, but still held DC to just 13 goals as the Empire prevailed 21-13 to sweep its series against the Breeze. As you see in the standings, Montreal swept a unique Sunday doubleheader over Rochester, so the Royale heading into their pivotal matchup with Ottawa, a battle for third place, while Toronto and New York continue to hold the first 2 positions in the East. Tuesday. Our Club Junior catch of the game featured in the ESPN Sports Center Top 10 this past week for the catch he made against Vancouver. Be surprised if this makes an appearance in the AUDL Top 10 as well this coming week. Sick. Well, when you watch this, it's
The Scion FRS. Scion, what moves you?
Turned into a very nice night here in Montreal. Welcome back to Percival Molson Stadium, everybody. As you can see, about 75 seconds away from the start of the second half. How about the top 10 last week? Some of the best plays of the season. Certainly some candidates from the first half tonight. We got 24 minutes to go. What do you think the key is for Montreal? They were trailing most of that half. How do they continue to build on what they were able to put together late in the second half?
Well, I think it's important for them to keep up with the zone that they have put on. Talking with Derek Alexander, it sounds like they think they can make the adjustments necessary to beat it, but he's certainly not confident that they can do that. So I think it's important they keep putting on that pressure. I also think it's very important that they work as hard as they can to push the flow as fast as they can.
Alexander made some incredible throws, remarkable marksmanship over the course of the game, laying out. Meanwhile, for Montreal, Yolan Cabot, a steady target. He's had some nice puts, and this might have been the play of the half.
Yeah, he did a great job reading that disc against some pretty tight Outlaw defense. We have just seen him come alive this entire game. He's been clutch at moments when the Royale need him most.
Montreal, just like the first quarter, will receive the disc to start the third quarter. Ottawa scored 50 seconds into the game via a break. So we will see if the Royale can do a better job taking care of business, receiving the opening pull of the second half. Evan Lepler and Megan Tormey with you from downtown Montreal in the province of Quebec. Winner of this game is in third place in the East, a division where only 3 teams make the playoffs and the season winding down. This is the penultimate game for Montreal. Ottawa has 3 more after this one. Contact on the mark, and the Royale will march into the red zone. Lepagnon shoots it deep, right on the money for the score.
That was a great put. We saw earlier this game how tricky of a throw that can be, to be so close to the end zone, to be throwing to someone who's running away and still be able to get it in on the mark without going out the back of the end zone. I was also very impressed with how quickly the Royal came back from their adjustment from the foul from the Ottawa defense. Without a moment hesitation, they put that disc back into play, which is how they were able to catch Ottawa on their heels.
First score of the day from Jean-Lévis Champagne.
You know, talking with Champagne before the before the game started, there are some heavy hearts on the Royale tonight. Someone who has been a stalwart in the Montreal community, his name is Dominique Roy, passed away on his way to Masters Regional. The funeral was just this morning, and the church was absolutely packed with members from the Ultimate community. So there's that on the minds of Royale players tonight.
Yeah, certainly they're thinking of him. Ultimate community, very close, very tight-knit here in Montreal, just like many other communities. We are on serve, tied at 15. Early stages of the second half. Jansen for Alexander. The sure-handed superstar. Scoobers for Jansen. How about another Scoober to break the mark into the hands of Way. And now they're looking for Alexander deep, and he makes the grab just shy of the end zone. But he was hit, and he's slow to get up. Scary moment there. Charles Barreteau trying to get position back, hit the leg of Alexander. And he is in some pain down there.
I believe it was Monfette with the contact.
You're right.
Undoubtedly, all of the Outlaw players waiting with bated breath to see if their mainstay is able to get up and continue the dominance he has been displaying all game long.
Obviously, great concern for Alexander. And he went up for that disc like a deep cutter. You know, he had it sized up. He went for it with a left hand. There was never a doubt that he was going to make the play. And he just got hit awkwardly on that left leg. You know, I don't even think that was a malicious play by Monfette at all.
No, absolutely not. But as you mentioned, came down awkwardly after being kicked in the air.
And he may have got dinged in the side of the head, too. A good sign to see him walking off the field. There is some blood. First I thought you said he got kicked in the air. You meant he got kicked in the ear. Both were true. We'll see if he can get patched up. He's such a valuable cog to their offensive line. And now on the restart, it'll be Hogel as Ottawa seeks to punch it in and regain the lead. Fake a Scoober. And that's the dump cutting to the end zone. It's Keelan Way to re-give the Outlaws the one-score edge.
Cabot recognizing just a moment too late the danger that was present with Way cutting forward for the disc like that. You know, I'm very curious about the sense that all of the players on the Outlaws must have right now. It's really tough to lose your main player the way they just did. I'm not sure if Alexander will be coming back into the game. There are so many fantastic players on the Outlaw, but really Alexander is often the difference maker in those really tight points.
He's currently sitting on a trainer's table at midfield across the way, getting medical attention. Every teammate on his offensive line has gone over there to check, and Alexander does have a smile on his face. You know, if they can get that patched up quickly, he'll be back in there. This is Castagno, able to break the mark. Lepagnon to St. John Timmins. Fires it in for Grew. And I thought I heard a whistle. Everybody looking at each other, and there was contact before the throw from Grew. So Montreal will keep possession of the disc. And Grew may have gotten away with a bit of an ambitious hammer. Back to Castagno. Looking for Rio Pell, and he's got him. Well placed from Gustavo Castaño, the Colombian-born Canadian. Moved to Montreal, joined the ultimate scene, and he hits Rio Pell. 18th assist of the year for Castaño to tie things back up at 16.
I really enjoy watching Castaño. He is not one of the flashier players on the Royale, but is certainly a very consistent player. You will see him making smart decisions all the time, and on defense, he works effortlessly. So you can't necessarily look to him for the flashiest highlight plays, but you can certainly look to him to make clutch plays for the Royale.
They've put a lot more pressure on him this year as one of the key mainline handlers, replacing Eric Dion and Tim Sang. Matthew Bordelot, another key piece to the Montreal defense from last year, who did not return this year, but Royale added some pieces, and guys that you talked about earlier have stepped up. Montreal certainly envisioning their first playoff berth as a franchise. A win today would put them in a magical position. Would basically put Ottawa on the brink of elimination. That disc is caught on the near sideline. Tremendous layout to keep possession alive by Goodkey, and then he drops the dime in the end zone. Beg your pardon, that was Matt Hogel. Hogel rather than Goodkey. Ken Alexander the score.
It was a great layout, and you could see in his eyes he had no doubt he was going to get it. He just knew exactly what he needed to do. Throwing to Ken Alexander. Monfette working hard defensively, but that's a tough throw and a tough cut to try and cut off.
Now, we have seen some really impressive throws in this game. It helps that there's very little wind down in the field tonight. There's Ken Alexander's younger brother, Derek, still being stitched up. He was kicked the side of the head inadvertently as he went up for a sky near the end zone. Ottawa's offense converting that last score without him. Nemours to receive the pull. Christian Mathieu breaks the mark nicely. Back to Nemours. To Mathieu. First couple looks weren't there, and Mathieu turned it over. There's a good poach D from Goodkey. Colin Green. Cross field and a tremendous layout D. That was Jean-Philippe Riopel denying the dump. And into the end zone, we're tied again. Bookends for Jean-Philippe Riopel, one of the most impressive individual sequences we've seen all night.
And that nearly effortless hammer from Yolande Cabot, casually put to Riopel in the end zone.
Not just the D, but the footwork from Riopel here to deny the disc on the handler. What are you seeing from him?
Well, obviously, he was tight enough to his person that he could make a play if necessary, but that's really some pretty intense effort to make that last-ditch layout D to get the disc back for your team.
Big defensive play from the Montreal O-line after the Mathieu turnover. Still no Derek Alexander. He is on the sideline getting tended to. Yolande Cabot with his 4th assist of the game on that last hammer, leading his team. That's an impressive deep shot curling over the top. And one throw later, the Outlaws are in the end zone. Hogel to 4-0. And the Outlaws back up by 1.
They have done an excellent job all night working both their short and their long game. That becomes such a complex field for the Royale to guard. Take the unders away, they'll work it long. Try and deny the deep, and they'll just work the short game all the way into the end zone.
Hogel picking up the assist. And he was a rugby player, but because of a work action issue at his high school did not field a rugby team when he was a senior. So he had some friends who played Ultimate. He thought, well, I'll give it a try. I got to do something. And who knew he'd be playing professional Ultimate down the road. Matt Hogel now 33. And a whistle will give Montreal 10 yards. Still lots of time tonight. Early stages, third quarter, and more contact. Bryce Ring pressuring the handler, and that's back-to-back fouls on him. This is why I wish we had a foul-out situation, because if Ring picked up 2 fouls in a span of 8 seconds, it'd be much more meaningful if he was, say, 2 fouls or 3 fouls away from being disqualified for the night.
Right, if you're not penalized for not adjusting your play, there's not as much incentive to change.
That was quick. Hot to Grew. Number 8 hit number 80. The end of one quarter, Megan. The Outlaws led by 2. The end of 2 quarters, the Outlaws led by 1. And right now, we're tied 18-all.
Yeah, there's never been a point during this game where either team has really been able to let up on the intensity, both physically and mentally. Even when the Outlaws had a 4-point lead, I think they understood they weren't necessarily secure or comfortable ahead in this game.
This is the only game of the weekend for both of these teams. Both back in action next weekend hosting DC. The Outlaws will get a Fresh Breeze team on Saturday. The Royale will host a fatigued squad from the U.S. on Sunday. Deep shot. Hogel, wide open. Heck of a throw there. I believe from Jansen. How about that for a put?
That was actually 4-0.
Yeah, Leon 4-0.
Which is the exact opposite of the previous Outlaw score, which was Hogel to 4-0.
They're both good on either side of the score.
Taking turns, stacking their stats.
19-18, Ottawa by 1. Cabot. He's been leading his team all season long. Grew airs it out. St. John Timmins and Nemours size it up, and it's Sean St. John Timmins. And he hits Nemours in the end zone. Amidst a ton of traffic, Montreal's St. John Timmins rose above to tie it up.
I really felt like St. John Timmins had the best position that entire time. However, I have to think that that particular put had a little more loft than Grew intended. There was just enough time for different defenders to suck in and make that play a little more challenging for St. Jean. But he had set himself up appropriately enough, early enough, that he was still the best target for that throw. Nemours very quick to respond to the fact that the disc was caught by his teammate, trying to set himself up at the front of the end zone for an easy score.
Our 4th tie of the second half. Beg your pardon, the 5th tie of the second half. And unless a whistle comes late, this is going to be Montreal's disc. The Royale have it. Montreal has not led since it was 2-1. Taking a chance. There was some contact from the weak side, but no whistle as Genet could not come up with a disc. It was Ochterlony who came the help side defense. Ochterlony wide open as his defender poached away. Being forced backhand to the near sideline. And Derek Alexander is back into the game for Ottawa. That's a great sign. Contact there, and quickly Hogel takes his 10 yards to restart after the foul on Guy. The fans reminding Hogel that you get 10 yards, not 12, not 11, not 13 or 15. This is Loiseau. Up the sideline goes Ottawa. Ochterlony unmarked momentarily and allows him to get the big swing. Loiseau over the way. And into the end zone for Derek Alexander, who is back and has given the Outlaws a one-score edge again.
The moment he's back on the field, obviously, it makes a huge difference for the Outlaws. They were forced up against the near sideline for a long time that point. When they were finally able to pull it off, it looked like they were having a difficult time getting opportunities to score. Alexander recognizing that, streaking from across the field to give way an opportunity to throw one in for a score.
Good game in the South Division tonight. Atlanta and Charlotte. Obviously the Hustle a heavy favorite in that game from a standings standpoint, but the Express obviously with a lot of pride playing at home, and Charlotte jumped out to a 3-0 lead in that game. Now 6-5, still very early. Here's Castagno looking for an opening, and he gets it to Cabot, who's often open when the stall count rises. That disc popped up, but Cabot was there. Fans appreciating the creativity.
Moments like that can be so embarrassing if no one on your team is able to save a misfire like that.
And this is no misfire. What a shot from Lepagnat over all the bodies. Across the field to Francois Xavier Hucht. 20 all.
Before the game, when I was talking to Jean-Lévy Champagne, I asked him what was the difference between last season and this season. They have climbed so high in the rankings when you compare them to last year. I asked him what was the big difference maker, and he said, you know, last year we were losing games by 1 point. This year we're winning games by 1 point. Clearly everyone is making just the minor adjustments they need to edge themselves out and make themselves one of the top teams in this Eastern Division.
Their first 2 games of the year were both tough ones, at New York and home for Toronto. After those 2 games, their head coach, Michael Lacombe, admitted to me that I expected we'd be 1-1 after the first 2 games. He thought they would beat New York and lose to Toronto. Turned out they did the opposite, as that pull sails out of bounds. That disc soared over 100 yards in the air. But after that win over Toronto, Montreal gained a good amount of confidence. They won at Philadelphia by 5, at DC by 1. And then their first game against Ottawa was a one-score loss, 25-24, back on May 16th. Followed that up, though, with 3 straight wins before losing to Ottawa again on June 13th. Lost to Toronto last Saturday, but then beat Rochester twice. The Royale did last Sunday. A unique doubleheader necessitated by a postponement earlier this year. Ottawa's offense has been smooth here in the second half. A Loiseau to Jansen.
Looked like a tight pass in between several Royale defenders. The entire time, the Outlaws looked very confident with the puts that they were throwing. The disc moved very quickly the entire time.
You know, with guys like David Jansen, Ken Alexander, Derek Alexander, the Ottawa offense, no matter who they're playing against, always will expect to score. As Derek Alexander said to you, confidence is sort of his trademark, but it's also the experience and the poise under pressure.
No, that's a very good point. Jansen and Ochterlony are certainly not the only individuals on the Outlaws who boast such a resume, having played in high-pressure situations representing their country in various formats. There are a number of players on the Outlaw who are able to say that they've experienced play at that level, at that caliber.
Matthew and Castagno playing catch in the handler core. And now swing to the near side of the field where it's Lepagnon. To Cabot. Directing traffic, airs one out. What a shot. And we're tied again as Francois Xavier Hott continues to get open in the end zone. And how about that throw from Cabot?
That throw, that vision, he was able to see over all of the opportunities. Put it in just for Hott to receive.
How does a handler develop vision like this?
That is a great question, Evan. I think that it helps if you have really great receivers on your team, people who are able to cut to a wide space and give you those opportunities to see them. But short of having good receivers, I think
just playing as much as you can.
There are a number of players who are able to develop that sort of vision without having good coaches, but I think good coaching is really instrumental in helping you see past the obvious in cut, past the obvious long cut, helping you see, you have this arsenal of throws, and that will get you to be able to put the disc in different areas of the field, and what that could mean is your players will be able to react and cut to the space you want them to.
Over and over again, we see great throwers able to throw their teammates open. Here's Alexander. Threw that one high and let his brother make the play. Ken Alexander, 7 yards from the end zone, and he'll pick up the assist. The goal belongs to Carl Loiseau. We continue to trade points here in a rapid-fire third quarter.
I'm eager to see Ken's catch again because he was definitely not in position to catch that disc. He was in front of Monfette running away. He stopped, changed his position. He knew that the throw was a little bit short and then stepped in front of Monfette to make that play.
There's definitely some telepathic powers on the field when it comes to Derek and Ken Alexander. Those kids will develop that cohesiveness one day. When Derek released that disc, my initial thought was, for him, that was not a very good throw. I mean, it was not a sure thing, but yet I eat my words because Ken never had a doubt that he was going to make that grab, even though he wasn't in an ideal position.
Yeah, those two have played together for a number of years, and certainly helps when you're throwing with someone you're so familiar with.
Had a lot of quick points over these last few minutes. See if Montreal can convert quickly again. Using the width of the field, so key in this league. Picking your spots with the unders. Namor is back to Hot. Downfield, it's Matthew. Swing it all the way to Cabot. Montreal's offense looks very in control here. Third option was Namor, horizontally across the field. Marked tightly, but he escapes to Castagno. Lepagnol hits Matthew. This is one of the lengthier non-turnover possessions in this entire game. But at any moment, you never know when a hammer might find the end zone. Castagno let it fly. And it was Jean-Philippe Riopel who hauled it in.
As confident as the Royale offense looked to that point, that's the kind of situation that Coach Lacombe was a little bit concerned about coming into this game. He didn't want to see the point where there weren't enough in-cuts to keep downward momentum. They are not their best when they're moving it side to side too frequently. We have, however, seen a number of fancy throws from players on the Royale, from Gru, from Castagno, that have been able to get past the downfield stagnation. However, that particular point, not exactly the kind of offense that Lacombe has wanted to see from his team tonight.
On a winless night, the Hammers are oh so effective. Now, this is an interesting defense here from Montreal. A little bit of a different kind of zone than what we've seen earlier, and so far Ottawa having no trouble as the swing goes 45 yards across the field. 2 minutes remaining here in the third quarter. Foreno hit Ken Alexander. Octorloni. Keelan Way to the end zone. Leon Foreno is there. This left end zone from our vantage point getting worn out with one score after another. These teams continue to trade. No breaks in the entire second half, Megan. From 15-14 to 23-22. 16 scores in a row.
I'd be curious to know what the Royale chatted about in the locker room in the second half, because they have been playing a different game than we saw at the beginning of this game. They still need to turn on the Jets and get to the point where they're scoring as quickly as we have seen that they are able to do for them to have the edge. But they have definitely pulled it in and tightened it up to the point where the Outlaws don't have the ability to just run away with it.
Another big pull here from Andy Corey. That was gorgeous. 5 yards deep in the end zone on the sideline. Quickly outside of the end zone to Riopel. And Montreal will see that last throw get nullified by a contact foul before the throw. Montreal restarts quickly after the 10-yard movement. Namors breaks the mark to Castagno. The tumbling grab with 90 seconds in the quarter. The whistle blew when the disc was in the air, and I think a travel was called. Castagno called for dragging the pivot foot on that release. It's a lonely violation when it's called on you.
It sure is, especially considering how tight this game is and how the Royale have been able to keep the Outlaws from breaking.
It feels like that's the first turnover in a half hour, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Timeout called by Ottawa. They sense how important that turnover might turn out to be. $1:26 to go in the third. The Outlaws up by 1, and a nail-biter here in Canada. Turned into a beautiful night for Ultimate here in Montreal. The Royale trailed by 1. They just were called for a travel, so the Outlaws have the disc. And Derek Alexander shoots long for his brother. They make it look so easy. Derek to Ken. The Outlaws have a huge break, and it's a 2-score game.
The Outlaws, no doubt, very thankful that Derek was able to come back from his injury earlier in this game. Really, at so many points, he's just been such a difference maker for the Outlaws.
Believe this is the second time tonight that the score has officially gone Alexander to Alexander. Both circumstances, Ken receiving from Derek. Now the Outlaws will receive to begin the fourth. That makes this point even that much more important for Montreal. I want to send a shout out to the Indianapolis AlleyCats who tweeted at us, Megan, that they're watching the game tonight as they get ready for their matchup with the Minnesota Wind Chill tomorrow afternoon. 4 big games left for the AlleyCats in the Midwest as they try to make the playoffs for the 4th consecutive year.
Now there is a team that I'm very sad we were not able to showcase so far this season. They are a very fun, intense team to watch.
They play with some spunk. These two teams do as well. Cabot sends it a laser beam huck. Oh, and what a grab! No, it fell out of the hands of St. John Timmins at the last second. That might have been another Sports Center top 10er.
Absolutely, what a shame.
If he could have hung on.
Beauty, that was a beauty.
And more important than the highlight status and where it would have ranked in the top 10, it would have made it a 1-score game. Final seconds of the third quarter. Imperative that Montreal comes up with a D here. Near the end zone, it's Octorloni. With 2 on the clock, he releases and hits Jeremy Hill at the buzzer. The Outlaws will take a 3-score lead to the 4th.
That was an amazing play in and of itself, but the fact that they were able to squeeze that in the remaining 9 seconds of this quarter, absolutely fantastic heads-up play by the Outlaws.
Nick Boucher will get credit for the hockey assist as he aired it out. Gave Octorloni a chance, and then just the Royale defense too frazzled to stop the quick strike. And that one really stings. Looks like they may have put a second back on the clock. So Ottawa will pull, and Montreal might have a desperate chance to launch one. What a sequence there to change it from a 1-score game if Timmins makes that grab to a 3-score game with Octorloni doing the damage.
There's only one way this play can go, no doubt. The Outlaws will hang back, anticipating a huck. They're probably going to put a lot of defensive pressure in the end zone on the off chance that the Royale are able to get it, send it into the end zone in a second.
Andy Corey has been doing a stellar job on the poles all night. Airs it out to give his defenders, two of them, a chance to get down there. And he got this off. This is going to get to the end zone, and this would count for Montreal if they can catch it. But it's D'd up by Jeremy Hill. The 19-year-old, currently the captain at Brock University. Look out for him in London in a couple of weeks. He'll be on the Canadian U23 mixed team. And he ripped that down with authority to send us to the final quarter tonight. Montreal did an admirable job just to give themselves a chance here.
They did a fantastic job.
That's a catch for 500. Everyone's played 500 throughout their lives. Beautiful evening here in downtown, but the Royale trail by 3. We've got 12 minutes remaining here from Percival Molson Stadium on a very splendid evening. Stay with us.
Traveling can be annoying. Airports get crowded. Buses are too slow and pricey. A rideshare would be nice, but finding the right one can feel impossible. Until now, Tripta makes ride-sharing super easy. So put away your thumb and take out your phone. Sign in to the Tripta app instantly with your Facebook account. Want to offer a ride? No problem. Pick your route. Set your price. Register your car and ready to go. Want to find a ride? Select a route. Pick the best schedule for you. And choose the best driver for you based on reviews written by previous passengers. These reviews help you know the people you're traveling with. The Tripta app also lets you chat with other drivers and passengers directly without having to share your phone number. And for women who prefer to ride only with other women, we have a ladies-only option. That's Tripta in a nutshell. Cheaper than a bus ride, less complicated than a plane, and a lot more fun than traveling alone. Plus, with Tripta, you help protect the environment by reducing road traffic. So now you know, next time you want to ride, forget your thumb and think Tripta.
Getting ready for the final quarter of play here in Montreal on the campus of McGill University. Some great plays in this third quarter, Megan. The teams traded each of the first 16 points of the quarter. Ottawa up 1 at the half. They got it to 23-22. But those last 2 points of the quarter, both scores, both breaks for the Outlaws. St. John Timmins was almost able to make a catch to get Montreal back within 1, but he couldn't. Ottawa scored at the other end. Here was the near layout. He did all he could. Mikel Lacombe looking for answers as his Royale pulling to begin the final quarter. Derek Alexander was shaken up with 10:45 to go in the third quarter, but he got stitched up. His ear was bleeding, it appeared. Came back in after a few points and picked up right where he left off. Loiseau bluffed the deep shot. Here's Octorloni just across midfield. Loiseau. Derek Alexander. Shoots to the end zone. And a rare errant toss. He wanted a little more outside in on that, Megan.
And he himself looked surprised and disappointed. He took a knee and put his hand over his face. Not accustomed to making mistakes like that.
And the disc is going to come in at 15 yards outside the end zone. St. Denis, big swing across the field. Genet to Cabot. Montreal going to need 4 breaks in this quarter to win it in regulation. And that disc smacked out of the hands of Cabot. Alert play by Loiseau, and now they send Loiseau. Can he get there? So close.
Near bookends for Carl Loiseau. Got D'd by the ground, just like St. John Timmins did earlier in this game.
Chance for Yolande Cabot to taste redemption. High backhand for Grew. Under 10 minutes to go. A lengthy opening point of this final quarter. Laser flick from Cabot. And now a shot to the end zone. In the back corner, he got the feet in bounds. Max Guy, great awareness.
Great speed as well. You saw how quickly he got separation on Carl Loiseau, who is also an incredibly quick player. And then he kept the back of the end zone in his line of sight the entire time. Saw how many stutter steps he took to make sure he kept his hands positioned underneath the disc, but still managed to catch it just in bounds.
So that's one break to bring the Royale back within 2. Wonder if Genet meant to make this as close as it was.
Well, he knew with a defender like Carl Loiseau, he would need to give him the opportunity to get separation, but I do think that that was still just a little more exciting than he wanted.
Tight game between Minnesota and Cincinnati. Raleigh up a couple breaks on the Nashville NightWatch. So off a rare Derek Alexander miscue, Montreal gets one break back. And interestingly, Alexander not on the field this point. Ken is, Derek is not. And there's a turnover. Contact on the mark, the Royale marching in the right direction. You know, the crowd would really become emotionally and energized, but there's a great D. Laying out Matt Hogel, retakes possession.
Making up for his earlier drop.
But that throw went out of bounds. Hill couldn't make the catch on the sideline. Derek Alexander, been told, bleeding again. Remnants from the earlier injury. That's why he's not on the field here. Standing at midfield, Montreal looking to the end zone to get within 1. Incomplete.
Monfette with a diving effort, not able to get enough air to pull that one in from the Royale.
A receiver travel is called on Andy Corey. He did not initiate play from the correct spot, so he'll be forced to basically start this from the reverse brick. Middle of the field. And the Outlaws are going to take a timeout here to organize how they're going to get this out of the end zone. We'll see if Derek Alexander can be back on the field. Certainly the Outlaws could use him as they try to close this thing out. Ottawa 25, Montreal 23. Outlaws disc when we return.
Style with engagement. Style with confidence. Style with consciousness. Style with vibrance. A wave of social change being born. Waveborn. Style with impact.
8 minutes, 4 seconds on the clock. after numerous points that unfolded and completed in 30 seconds or less throughout the course of this game. This is just the second point of the fourth quarter.
And you have to think that both teams at this point are getting tired. As I mentioned earlier, there's never really been a point where either team has been able to relax. It can be very exhausting to keep up that kind of intensity for 4 12-minute quarters.
Derek Alexander still on the sidelines getting tended to, but this time Ottawa was able to traverse out of its own end zone. And now they're across midfield, looking to reestablish the 3-score lead. Ken Alexander and a great layout from Kevin Grew. Did they blow the whistle? It looks like they did. Got to see this one again. Hard to tell exactly what the call was. Every call in this situation so meaningful. The referees coming together. Definitely wasn't anything. The referee immediately said contact from that right side. What do you see, Megan?
I thought the contact occurred after Grew had made the D.
Referee's assistant is having a ball regardless of the call.
Who doesn't love Depeche Mode?
So there was contact 2 passes before the turnover. That is a bizarre sequence when it looked like Grew had timed his poach perfectly. So from 10 yards away from the end zone, there's Derek Alexander, wounded but still focused. See if Montreal can get a turnover and try to prove that this doesn't lie. Nope, they can't. Perhaps it was contact after all. If you believe in karma, there was contact because Ottawa finds Ken Alexander to reestablish a 3-score lead. First point of this fourth quarter took 2 minutes and 19 seconds. That last point took 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Montreal started with a break, had many opportunities for a second consecutive break, but Ottawa able to hold as Way picks up the assist.
You know, I have to say, for teams entering the AUDL, there's a very steep learning curve. There's so much to get adjusted to that it's understandable when teams don't start coming together until the end of the season. But I am so impressed with how quickly the Outlaws have clearly adjusted to the AUDL, and I have to think that Carl Loiseau plays a major part in that. He has experience playing in a winning franchise. He knows what needs to be done to help his team win. Ottawa, a very talented team, but clearly they were able to come together as quickly as necessary to be an impactful team in this division.
On the ensuing possession, LePagnon finds the crease to Castagno, and quickly it's St. John Timmins in the end zone. In just 21 seconds, Montreal counters.
And we'll see if this is a start of one of their quick scoring sprees. 20 seconds is on point with as fast as they've scored earlier. Most notably, their 3-point run in less than a minute.
So the Royale back within 2, 7 minutes on the clock. You're talking about the genesis of the Ottawa Outlaws and Carl Loiseau's importance with his AUDL experience. One of the owners of the Ottawa Outlaws, of course, Jim Lloyd, who's also part owner of the Toronto Rush. but a resident of Ottawa. And Jim really wanted there to be a team in Ottawa this year. When Jim Lloyd and Carl Loiseau would commute from Ottawa to Toronto, a good 3-4 hours, they would have long conversations in the car about Ultimate, about business, about life. And it was late last year when Jim Lloyd basically told Carl, we're starting a team in Ottawa. I want you to be on it. I want you to be the leader. I want you to be the GM and help choose the rest of the personnel. Ochterlony tumbling to the ground, but he hangs on for the score.
After a very tough read, watching it again, you'll notice he looks over his right, looks over his left, looks over his right shoulder, because that disc is sailing directly over his head. You know, if he had dropped that disc, you couldn't have blamed him. Those are incredibly, incredibly tough discs to read. But his experience helps him keep his wits about him enough to pull that in.
It looked like he almost sort of tricked himself in how he pursued that disc in a zigzag mentality. Pretty good throw, though, Ochterlony. The easiest path to it. Another big game for the big fella. Another excellent pull deep in their own end zone. The Royale emerge and name more with Robert Schmidt crawling all over his back. Takes the 10 yards, walks it off and hits St. John Timmins. That throw deflected and caught anyway. Lepagna off the fortuitous tip. The Royale within 2.
Disappointing turn of events for Corey, who no doubt thought that he had that D. Just not able to take it away enough for Lepagna.
Certainly a killer from the Ottawa perspective. Lepagna, like Michael Jordan with his tongue hanging out. Without the deflection, I'm not sure Lepagna would have made it in the end zone. They should at least give Corey credit for the assist. In actuality, it's St. John Timmins.
Not sure Corey would want the credit for that one.
So Megan, after the first 2 points of this half took about 2:20 each, the last 3 points have been 21 seconds, 30 seconds, and 16 seconds. A lot of goals can be scored quickly. Ottawa's turn. Ochterlony dishes it off for Jansen. Shook off his mark and found way. Philip Tivier is just doing a really good job preventing Derek Alexander from getting the disc easily. Finally, you have to sacrifice 8 yards to get a touch.
Yeah, you think about how many times Derek Alexander touches the disc, what an exhausting job it must be to guard him, and Svierge has been doing it nearly exclusively all evening.
He gets the restart of the stall count, shoots a hammer, wants Ochterlony, back of the end zone, and he landed with the back foot on the line. Oh, it was so close. Because Ochterlony was staring at the disc, he didn't have a great sense of how close he was to the back of the end zone.
Yeah, had he kept his feet closer together or had he landed on just his left foot, that would have been a score for the Outlaws.
Another opportunity for the Royale. Under 5 minutes to play now. It's Cabot to Grew. The mainstays for the Montreal line. Cabot airs it out. Grew was tripped up. Believe this is going to be an inadvertent contact, and it'll be Ottawa's disc. Fans wanted a penalty there, but that would have been a tough call as Grew and Boisseau got tangled up. Every missed chance just feels so magnified. Again, they want Ochterlony, but that guy's not going to count, even though it was impressive, but no, it will. The referee blew the whistle too early. That was, I think, the correct call, but probably poorly done on the part of the official, because by blowing the whistle, it indicates that the defense should be stopping. But they will count, and I think that's the right play. It doesn't seem that the whistle interfered with the defender's pursuit of the disc either, but Ochterlony will get credit for the goal.
Absolutely. Neither Guillemette nor Ochterlony seemed at all inhibited by the whistle. Ochterlony making a great read, great grab over Guillemette, who is really tight and in good position to make a D.
The pendulum swings back in Ottawa's favor. Don't forget AUDL on ESPN3 next week from Atlanta. Ryan Jones and Chuck Kindred will have the call. And I am jealous of both of them for the game that they will get to witness firsthand. The Hustle and the Jacksonville Cannons. Could Jacksonville go from 3-3 at the start of the season into the playoffs down south? It's very possible. And an injury has been called. Looks like Ottawa's Andy Corey a little shaken up, and he will slowly stroll off the field. On the quick restart, they send it deep. Hot and 3 Outlaw defenders. And from behind, it was knocked away. Well done by the army of Outlaw defenders.
And that's about how many people it takes to defend against Hot, who has been absolutely on fire tonight. He's been such a tough receiver for the Royale. It's no wonder they sent so many people to try and stop him from catching the disc.
Heading long the other way, looking for Mike Lee. The shorter Castano bodies for position, and the disc gets knocked away. Contact on the restart. Castano will pick it up. We're certainly into crunch time now. This is almost must score from Montreal's standpoint. Even though we've seen goals come in 20, 30 seconds, falling behind by 4 would seem backbreaking.
Yeah, they have been able to score quickly, but not on command.
And another miscue. Hot really had no chance for the greatest. And you can feel this one slipping away. I think the Royale fans can too. Champagne on the mark. Two and a half remaining. And contact will nullify the dump. In actuality, Montreal gains about 15 yards from that whistle. They dump it back 8. If the Outlaws win, they will be in position to control their destiny. But it's not an easy road with DC next week and Toronto twice on July 18th and 19th. To make it a 4-score game, the Outlaws are 2 minutes away from sweeping their Montreal rivals in the regular season.
Mike Lee getting the long throw he was hoping for earlier. You could see him try to communicate with the thrower immediately when he recognized how much separation he had over his person and in what perfect position he was for a long, straight throw.
Robert Schmidt, 23-year-old with a put. Namor has just had too much ground to make up. So true desperation time for the Royale. you don't want to think about a Hail Mary here, but you do have to think about scoring in basically 30 seconds, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have to decide what they can do offensively to try and get that disc moving as quickly as possible. If the Outlaws are able to clamp down defensively and slow the offense to the point where they're doing a lot of side to side and not forward momentum, then this game is as good as gone for the Royale.
Cabot takes a chance. He's only got 100 seconds left. He had to. Kevin Grew almost went up to snag it. But almost has been too common a word for the Royale tonight.
A receiver like Grew, you can almost trust him with just about any throw, but the entire time Boucher had fairly good position on him. It was not a very sound and secure throw. But like you said, because they're in crunch time, they've got to take those shots.
We've seen a lot of contact calls tonight on the mark. Referees have been very willing and eager to make that call. Time winding down as we tick under a minute to play. Up high and incomplete. So the Royale are going to fall to 8-5 with one game to go. If they can beat DC next week, they'd be 9-5 in the clubhouse, and Ottawa would have a couple games against Toronto to determine their fate. For the second time this month, the Ottawa Outlaws have come to Percival Molson Stadium and walked out victorious in front of the liveliest crowd in the AUDL. Final score, 29-25 in favor of the visitors from the Canadian capital of Ottawa. Funny how matchups work, huh? The only team in the East so far to have beaten Toronto is Montreal. The only team in the East that has not beaten Ottawa is Montreal. The Outlaws go 3-0 this year against the Royale. 5 losses for the season now the Royale have obtained. 1 to New York, 1 to Toronto, and 3 at the hands of the Outlaws. Living up to their name, they have stolen Montreal's power position in pursuit of the playoffs in the East. Certainly good spirit from both teams, a well-played game from both sides. Ottawa's offense led by Derek Alexander. Andy Ochterlony had a number of spectacular grabs, using his height and wisdom to put himself in great position to make plays all game long. A huge factor in the Outlaws' win, Andy Ochterlony, and Megan Tormey is down on the field with the Ottawa Outlaw star of the game.
Megan, thank you so much. What a game tonight. The Ottawa Outlaws were tested very much. Montreal was down early in this game, and then Montreal made a comeback, tied it up, but they were never able to take the lead at any point. From 15 all, we were tied at every number through 22, but at 23-22, Ottawa then scored a couple breaks at the end of the third. They went up by 3, and from there, despite an early break in the fourth, the Royale could not climb that mountain again. So Ottawa gets the win. The Outlaws now in favorable position to advance to the playoffs. However, if Ottawa is going to make the playoffs, they're likely going to need to beat Toronto at least once. So that's something to follow as the season winds down. A great battle here tonight in a great city of Montreal. Next week, we'll see you in Atlanta for the Cannons and the Hustle, Jacksonville and Atlanta, a game that will decide a playoff spot down south. But for everyone in our Fulcrum Media crew, we say good night for this spectacular Saturday. We wrap up the month of June with a spectacular game here in Canada. The final score last time, Ottawa 29, Montreal 25. On behalf of our entire Fulcrum Media crew and for my broadcast partner, Megan Tormey, this is Evan Lepler saying good night from Percival Molson Stadium, where the Royale made some spectacular plays, but Andy Octorloni and the Outlaws were too good down the stretch. The Outlaws get the huge win. They do it on ESPN3 and TSN Go. We'll see you next week in Atlanta.